actually been going to the Theology of the Body Institute on a regular basis. I've taken about 6 courses now at the Theology of the Body Institute. And this previous course that I took, which was taught by Dr. John Haas of the Catholic Bioethics Center, who was speaking on Catholic sexual ethics. And there's always a chaplain placed kind of as that spiritual director and leader over everybody that's there to make sure that we're all doing okay as we're being led through these beautiful courses. And so that's how I met Father Martin Connor. He was a spiritual director overseeing the entire program that week that we were there. And one thing I was really struck by, which, by the way, they always have great spiritual directors on hand, was his humanness. He just was so relatable, beautiful stories, but also there was this supernatural element of authentic love, authentic shepherding, authentic father-like. It exuded from him this genuine desire to meet people and to see them when they looked at you. You know what I'm talking about? When you can tell when somebody's listening to you and when somebody's just looking at you and waiting till they can say the next thing, or sometimes just too busy to listen. And so there was a lot of us there, and yet every single time I had a conversation with Father Martin, I really felt that he was meeting my person and genuinely entering into whatever it is I had to say. And that's just a beautiful blessing that we have the opportunity of men that have dedicated their entire lives to being in persona Christi, which means to be in the person of Christ, to be representative of Christ here on earth, and alter Christus, to not only bring the sacraments to us, but to enter into the plight of the church and to be that kind of minister for us on so many different levels. And so the way that I've kind of tied this in is I was thinking about for the terminally ill, that in their suffering they may be sustained by faith in God and by love of others. And for those of you that read my blog, which is embracingyourgreatness.blogspot.com, you know that I've talked about a spiritual leprosy that has taken place on the face of this world. And it's really like we all have this terminal illness. There is this death that has occurred on a spiritual level. And so I wanted to address that aspect. We talked a little bit about physical death on some of the last shows, and how important it is for us to even contemplate the fact that all of us at one day are going to come to an end, and death and taxes, right? Those are the 2 things all of us have in common. And so if we're going to be thinking about terminal illness, and if we're going to even be talking about this missionary aspect, I thought, wow, what perfect 2 things to go together. But a priest, that's priestly vocation is missionary work through Legionaries of Christ, but also to help us deal with a terminal illness that has overtaken this culture and the loss of the dignity of the human person. And so with no further ado, I want to introduce you to a good friend of mine, a growing friend of mine that's challenging me in great areas, and he can then give and shed a little bit more light on what he's all about. Father Martin, are you with me? Good morning, Father. I'm so blessed and grateful that you were able to be on the program with me. Can you tell my audience a little bit more about who Legionaries of the Christ are and how you became a priest with Legionaries of the Christ?
Sure. Thank you, Christina, for inviting me this morning to be with you and your listeners. I think it's a privilege to be able to share like this together on such important issues as you mentioned there. I met the Legionaries of Christ in 1990 after graduating from Boston College, and was ordained in 2001 in Rome after about 10 years of formation. The Legionaries are pretty often in the media, as you probably well know, because we've suffered a very terrible scandal amongst us with our father founder after discovering some very unfortunate news about his life. It's been very painful, not only for us priests, but for the church at large. We suffer greatly when one of our brother priests fails or falls in the sight of the Lord with such a great vocation, as you mentioned yourself.
So, Father, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There might be a lot of people out there that have never even heard of this, and there might be somebody that have heard of this and then have misunderstandings. Can you please tell me the name of that founder? And because I think I heard that there is even a blessing that he appeared at the Vatican and was given a blessing by Blessed Pope John Paul II, because of course he didn't realize what was going on with this. But then our Pope Benedict XVI has declared that this order can continue. Can you just give us just a couple of specifics, and then we'll move on from there?
Sure. The founder is a man by the name of Father Maciel. Maciel, he was born in Mexico and founded the order there in 1941. And we're not quite sure the reasons, you could say, the ongoing reasons for what exactly happened to him. He had a number of serious illnesses, physical illnesses, but he was discovered to have been involved in fathering some children and even in some situations with other priests. Very painful stuff, very hurtful stuff that the church is experiencing, unfortunately, internationally in different parts of the world. So, it's different to read it in other dioceses. It's another thing to live it in your own family. So that has been very difficult. The Holy Father, when it all came, public, so to speak, a couple of years ago, made a statement simply that our constitutions, which have been approved, are still in effect for the community, but he's asked us to review it, review our constitutions, our rule of life over a period of time, and has assigned us an apostolic delegate, by the name of Cardinal Velasio, who has been a real father to us and has led us through these times, and is preparing. We meet now regularly the different communities around the world, the United States as well, of course, reviewing a series of parts of the constitutions over. We're going to be doing that over a couple of years, and then that will culminate in a general chapter, which will then make an assessment of the results that the priests have come up with from our own lived experience, and that will then be approved by the Holy See. So that's the process, the road that we're on now. We've already been into about a year, a little bit more than a year, and we've got another 2 years or so. There's not a clear time frame. We just guess it'll roughly be 3 years before our general chapter.
So how is Regnum Christi affiliated with Legionaries of Christ, Father?
Well, Regnum Christi, kind of like the Franciscans have a third order, kind of a spiritual family. The Regnum Christi movement is the spiritual family that shares in the spirituality of the Legionaries. It was founded roughly around early 1950s, and I'm not sure how many the membership was at one time, up to 70,000 worldwide and around 10,000 in the U.S. I'm not really sure what the numbers are now, but there are those lay people, young people who, kind of like you were saying, are trying to live a Christianity that's authentic and that's life-giving, and they feel called to live that authenticity, but also to give it to others in a way that's more, let's say, apostolic. That apostolic impetus of the gospel to go and preach. Well, they feel called to be a little bit more active in their faith through that encounter with Christ. So we try to facilitate that as much as we can in a personal way through our spirituality, through spiritual direction, retreats, etc., and encourage them to be active in their faith, if they're in their parishes, in their local communities, whatever it is, with what they feel called to do, be it family work or youth work or whatever specific apostolate they have attraction to.
So how is it that you chose Legionaries of Christ, or did it choose you? I mean, how did you discern, number one, you wanted to be a priest, and number two, that it was going to be a Legionaries priest?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the vocation itself to the priesthood is a very mysterious. It's a very mysterious reality. I mean, you ask any priest, and they have amazing stories. Each one is its own, right? What I had done in my own time is I did go. It's kind of like Christ in the Gospel of John, where he invites John and Peter to come and see where he lives, and that's what you have to do that you have to go and you have to live and spend some time with different communities. It could be a diocesan seminary community. It could be a religious house. It could be a contemplative house, whatever it may be. Spend some time in prayer there and mix with those who are living it already and dialogue with them. And there's a sense through that process of, yeah, I could do this, or no, this isn't quite for me. So I had done that with Franciscans and the Capuchins, and went to the Benedictines, and spent some time also with my diocese, and none of those really quote unquote clicked, you know. And when I spent time with the Legionaries, with even a matter of an hour, I just had a sense that, well, I could connect with these guys. They were young, they were full of life, they totally loved the church, they wanted to serve people with their lives and be heroic in doing it. And I've never seen that kind of zeal before, and I was immediately attracted to it and decided to stick around, and see where this is going to take me. So that's basically how the process worked.
Oh, wow. So we're going to be going to break in just a second here. So I like how you pointed out that they were young and they were on fire and they had this heroic thing. Many of the people I've talked to have all said, have you ever noticed how all the Legionaries are like these young, really handsome, like strong-looking, well-built men? It's just a very attractive group of men. And I'm like, yeah, I've noticed that as well, that it just really, they're set apart, even the crispness of the lines of the clerics that you wear really have kind of set you apart. When I was kind of noticing the different ones, the different, I don't know, you call it orderlies, or what? How would I refer to the different? There's a Franciscans. There's yeah, right. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Father Martin Connor's unique story, and then a little bit about the missionary aspect of Legionary of Christ and the importance of it in today's world. When we come back after the break, stay tuned on Embracing Your Greatness. We'll be back after the break.